when you look at AI and learning and education and things from a bank standpoint, from a security standpoint, you need to be considering what kind of things can come in there. And so what was neat is that Black Hat, there was a talk that I went to, and it was Google. Google was there. It was Microsoft, NVIDIA, and another guy. And they were talking about what happens as a kid. You touch a hot stove, you burn yourself. You only do it once because you never forget what it felt like. And the idea is to work with models and train it so that the model itself, the foundation, can learn and differentiate between good and bad. So that way, you now have a much harder path to poison the data because it's going to look at it and go, that's a hot stove. I don't want it. I don't want to save that. Or that's good. That's helpful. That's beneficial to everybody, the ecosystem. Remember this.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Grizz Griswold of FINOS. Hope you're doing well. My guest today is Chris Lindsey of Men.io. Chris, say hello. How are you?
Hi, guys. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm happy to meet you today and happy to have you here as well. Chris, we'll get into Men, we'll get into other things, but I do want to know, what do you do?
I ask myself that every day. What do I do?
Fair.
The reality is I'm getting to live my dream. And what I mean by that is after 35 years of developing software in the healthcare industry, mostly for all that, and having to be secure in running teams, and then running a security program for 3 years, I am now able to just share my knowledge and help the security community. So my job over at Men.io is a security evangelist, application security evangelist. Cool. So I do a lot out in the community, just trying to help raise awareness because it's an area that needs a lot of help.
I think that's an understatement, honestly. But so let's backtrack. 35 years of writing software, and I do the fact that you're getting to do the things that you want to do because we should all live that way, honestly. But this podcast isn't about that. We can probably do a whole nother podcast about that. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about, especially since you may or may not have Superman shield behind you. Let's talk origin story. Okay. I did there. It all started in 1979 with the TRS 80 Model 1, opening the back of a magazine and seeing Crazy Climber and keying in the code out of the back of a magazine. Nice.
And I just fell in love with programming. And in 1984, I had a Commodore 64 and I started doing a lot of writing. Yep. And it's one of those things that I wrote a bulletin board software for the Commodore 64. It went nationwide. As a matter of fact, actually, I have a funny story. I made about maybe 10 or 15 discs that I sold off at the Commodore Users Group. And one of them actually came back to me late last year. It had made its way all the way up to Canada and was part of their Canadian users group up there and had found its way back. And so I actually have it hanging on my wall here. Nice. And I went on to writing software professionally. Even while in high school, I was writing software. I wrote a cash register system in Pascal. And then my fun story is when I was in college, I was trying to see if I can quiz out of Pascal since I was already writing it. And the university said, no, you have to take this class. And so I had asked the teacher, I'm like, come on, let me out. And he said, no. And the first day of class, I met some other guys, we're just chatting. And he told me, Chris, come up, talk to me after class. And he's like, if you're so smart, teach my class. And so I brought my computer with me. And back then we had the overhead projectors with the active screens.
Yeah.
So I'm dating myself there. But I spent the next 45 minutes actually walking through the cash register system that I had written in Pascal. And from that point on, he said, if I'm ever sick, you're going to teach my class. And I did a few times.
That's awesome.
And I just went on to doing more and more programming, and I just fell in healthcare. And the last really big project that I was writing and running was a medication prescribing system. When you look at the security around it and making sure you're writing good, secure software, it's very critical to ensure that you're not leaking data, you're not doing things. And in that 35 years, I've come a long way with secure coding and just, I can talk story after story from from a hacking standpoint and a securing standpoint. And I just, fun times.
So coming from healthcare, very obviously a very regulated industry as well, just like we deal with in finance in probably different ways. Yeah, hopefully doing things that don't eventually kill people. So that to me, it's probably even, I was going to say no more interesting, but more needed. But talk to me about maybe within a regulated industry. Let's go into the secure points. What are the different things that you have to consider? Maybe it's on the open source side, but just in general with software in a regulated industry, I'm sure that there are levels of security that go from, you've got the user levels that you have to deal with. You've got all the way up to the regulatory issues that you have to address when you're building these things, down to we just have to make it work as well.
Right.
So can you talk to maybe the different levels of security that you have to deal with in a regulated industry when you're putting out software?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. First and foremost, you're dealing with APIs. And with those APIs, 9 times out of 10, you're what's called a multi-tenant. Multi-tenant is where you have multiple companies or multiple users hitting the same endpoint. And so you need to make sure that when I connect in and I pull data, I can only reach and see my data. You also need to look at the accessibility of the data. Does Chris have access to read that data? Does Chris have access to see or pull that information? The other thing that you need to look at too from a security model is making sure that when data comes in, if it doesn't meet the criteria, for example, you have a field that's 15 characters in length and it exceeds 15 characters, somebody's manipulated the data somewhere in between. And it's easy to say, oh, let's just fix the data and get it in. And the reality is too many companies do that and they throw it out. Open source really does play a massive role with any application. And so when you're looking at the value that open source brings, for years, I would always tell my developers, look, don't reinvent the wheel, go find something out in open source. And we've also, as companies in the past and things that I've done, I've also contributed to the open source community because really open source is about giving and taking. The work that is done out there is very important. And really from a development standpoint, just like AI, you can really shorten the development cycle by finding the right tools, the right things, and bringing it into your application. And the hacker part of me is saying, okay, great, I found this tool, what can I do? And one that is very typical, it's not as typical anymore, but you would always have file uploads, the ability to upload a document, upload an X-ray, upload whatever. Mm-hmm. And when you look at file uploads, there's a lot of inherent issues that come with it. For example, directory traversal from a security standpoint. Can I upload something into a folder that I then have access to? So can I upload an exe that's malicious and then turn around and then launch it just by hitting the right web page or URL? And so there's so much. And when you look at the software penetration testing tools, you start looking at hitting those APIs, hitting the website, seeing what kind of data you can pull and just grab from. And when you look at the open source ecosystem and you look at the security around it, it's important to listen to the community, people using your software. Did they find something? Are they telling you, hey, I can do this with your tool? Or even going in as far as, let me go ahead and snag my own version. Let me make the fixes and then submit it back into you. So that way the community is just so much better for that.
Yeah, but let me devil's advocate, isn't it easy for a hacker to look at all the code with an open source project and say, oh, here are the vulnerabilities that the maintainers are not seeing. Mm-hmm. And whether it's a short play, I throw it in there, or a long play like we've seen recently, is there a counter to the open source software is great? However, there's all these potentially inherent things that we could find that people would manipulate.
No, absolutely. Think about it this way. The thing that just happened recently with open source, you look at the fact that there was just really 1 or 2 maintainers. You have open source where it may have been popular at one point and it fell off, but it's still part of the critical infrastructure for a given thing
that nobody knows about.
Exactly. Nobody knew about, and then all of a sudden something happened. And you're right. And the reality is, who are looking at the open source software in doing that. A big question that I have, and here's an answer too. Here's a problem and an answer that will be very helpful for everybody. Who does code reviews on open source tools? When you bring in an open source tool into your own environment, you assume with it being open source, you know what, it's got to be clean, it's got to be right. Exactly, just like you said, the vulnerabilities exist, possibly. And are you just going to take it blindly and bring it? So the question is, if you have a framework piece that's open source that you brought in, that's multi-millions of lines, like a jQuery or something else, what do you do there? You're not going to be able to code review the whole thing. And you bring up great points. If you have something that big, the question is, are there problems? Most likely, yes. And there's things that you can do. And my answer to this, just for those who ask, because I've been asked this, and here's my answer. You got to find a point in time where you're just like, look, this thing has been out for 3 months, 6 months. I believe that this version, since it's been out long enough, I'm going to give it my own trust. Then I'm going to take the latest version or whatever I'm using and do a code differential between the two, so that then I can see, is there something hidden in here, or what has changed from that time that I said, hey, this is good, to current. And then at that point, then you can start doing small code reviews as you take updated versions and things are out there. It's a heavy lift. It's a lot of effort. But the question becomes, you're pulling stuff and to your point, are you going to just trust what's out there, or are you going to trust but verify?
I was going to say, that's why I don't update my iPhone right when a new version comes out. But it goes to that point, and I'd never really heard anybody say this before on an open source project, that you take the stable version of it, or the most stable version of it that has been out for a certain amount of time. And I like the fact that your code review is the additive and subtractive stuff, as opposed to having to do everything. That I have not heard really. Yeah, probably since I've been doing this job. And would you say that's best practice at all? So the consumptions, and we're talking about consumption of open source, the consumption side for a bank or for a healthcare provider, we're talking about 5,000 different software products. You start going down the entire supply chain. So is this a best practice? Not is this a best practice? It sounds like a good idea, but is this something, do you think, that teams are using right? Or am I just totally naive?
There's hardly anybody doing it. It's the conversation when I share it is just like what you were just saying. Wait, that's a great idea. I never thought about that. Because when you look at some of the open source that is out there, all of a sudden you realize, man, this is a large project. If I were to go code review it, this could take me months or years, depending on the size. And there's good security tools that will do some, like SAST. It's a great thing that you can tie SAST to it and knock out some of the easy low-hanging fruit. But again, you look at some of the things that you can do from a development standpoint and creativity standpoint that will easily skirt those kind of tools. And now you got to be careful. To answer your question, in the finance area, because I've worked in finance as well on projects and things, realistically, a lot of companies like that will do firmware. Will find a version, they'll take it, and then what they'll do is just monitor what's going on. If they see that with that software that somebody has said, hey, look, we found a vulnerability, they actually fix it themselves internally and keep their own kind of quote unquote own version of that. Right. And they don't really change it. They just stick with it. And while that's good, on the other hand, it's really a mixed thing. And it's really all about managing your risk, because how risk adverse are you? If you're a bank, you should be very risk adverse. You should really be looking at, is this version good? Should we stick with it? And the funny thing is, that's how we see things back in the early days. We would find an open source project or tool, bring it in, and we would never change it because it worked. But we would later find that there's vulnerabilities, but we were none the wiser back then. And we would occasionally go in and say, all right, we've had this open source library for 3 years. We probably should go update it. And so there's better approaches that you can take.
There's also I'm 50. So, I've been around since before the internet really was something to go and, as a hacker, be able to find things that are out there. Now it's very easy, I would
Right.
say. And things aren't, obviously there are firewalls, but things aren't firewalled the way they used to be, which is they were never connected to the internet because there was none. The ability for potential hackers to, and keep seeing your thing here about Blackout 2024, that the ability for somebody to go in either on purpose or accidentally find something that your company's information is out there one way or another is ubiquitous. So, yay. Can we go into also, is there a role for, before we talk about anything with AI and security, is there a role for AI within these code reviews and everything as you're bringing something in that might be helpful to, so I feel like you just gave a speed up process for somebody who's bringing in an open source project to their company or any software, honestly.
Mhm.
Go with the stable and then look at the changes. Is there any type of code review that could be done AI wise that you think would help or that you've seen out there?
Yeah, absolutely. The question becomes really the tools that you're using, the environment that you're working with, and what you're doing. When you look at open source software, it's already out there. The code's out there. It's publicly available. There's nothing to hide. Go throw it through your favorite AIs and go ask, hey, did you find something? They're not great at finding everything because really your built models aren't necessarily coded well for that. Your security tools are crafted to find things, to look for specifics. And so really when you're doing AI for coding, really it's a lot of not really finding security as much as finding development practices. Things like create unit tests and test cases for me to validate the regression. Go ahead and look at the code and ask, can it be better? Can we clean it up? Can we make it more efficient? Are there security issues? And some of the models out there will come back and find things, and they're not crafted so well that they find everything. And so that's where having a security tool or whatever to help guide you. But the other thing that AI does that's really great is if you do have a finding, you have a cross-site forgery request. Most people don't know what that is, but you can ask AI, hey, what is this? And give me an example in my language. And how would I fix it in my language? And it will help give you answers there and really take you forward much faster. And when you're dealing with AI, don't pass your own source code in because some of the models out there train on the stuff being passed in. And if you send in your own code, guess what you've now done? You're part of the big training group and you don't want to be there. Yeah, you've now shared your intellectual property, whereas an open source tool or an open source project is already out there and it's accessible. So you're not hiding anything. You don't need to hide anything.
Right. When you said in your own language, at first I thought what I do every once in a while with some of the AI models is say, speak to me like I'm a 5-year-old. But you know what I mean? The actual programming language, I get it.
Yeah, like C, Java.
Okay. Okay.
The few languages that exist.
I did want to ask a follow on and said a couple of times in this program, my son's studying computer science right now, second year. And one of the things when he listens to me, by the way, because I do work for the Linux Foundation, funny story. I was talking to the number 2 Linux developer in the world, who may happen to also work for us. And I was saying, yeah, like my son I am in marketing, but I also have been coding half of my life too. And I said, yeah, he's a computer science student and he thinks that I have no idea about anything to do with computers. And I work at the Linux Foundation. And he looks at me and goes, you know, it's funny. My son just started university this year too, and I'm the number 2 Linux developer in the world. And he thinks I have no idea about anything to do with computers. So my son, who was a computer science, one of the things that I've tried to impart to him is that on the cybersecurity side, which is where he wants to go into, obviously, I've said that there are obviously tools that you're going to have to deal with that may be helpful to some of the things that you're doing. And it may actually help you with the pen testing and things like that. But thinking about, I was telling you about FINOS has this AI readiness special interest group that is really, it's less about open source is more just banks dealing with AI. Like you've got the legacy systems, you've got current systems, and then just how do I use this and not accidentally train a model the user error things that you made. But there's two sides of AI that I wondered if you might be able to address that I am interested in when I'm thinking about this, which is in security. Is one, there's when you have the owner of an AI company that says, we're not really sure how it does what it does, there's a security aspect that you really have to look at, right? Then there's also there's the, not how it thinks, I guess, but then there's also what it does and the outputs and everything. And so I feel like for cybersecurity, there are 2 points that I feel that you have to at least address and start to think about, like, not only what are we getting and what's the security aspect of this AI thing, but then there's almost the meta conversation of what is it thinking and how does it actually work and how does that affect what we're doing in the security sense? Yeah. Great questions. It's one of those things where when you look at AI, you have the process that looks at the large language model. And that process has the ability to go in and it puts weights to different things. The model itself is a collection of data that just gets put in and weights get assigned to it and other details. And what happens is it's a computer. It doesn't know really what is right and wrong unless you help guide it. You create those guardrails. But the problem I have is these guardrails are easy to circumvent. And some of the models that are being created out there are actually, it's almost like kind of malware in a way, where the model itself is a great concept and the model has things that are coded into it that if you just know how to ask it right or do the right thing, it will divulge information for you. For example, one of the things that I played with, I do a lot of AI playing at home, and when I was playing with some of the models with Linux, I asked it, give me the ETC password. Oh, that's really a security risk. I shouldn't. But there's other models that are like, sure, here's the contents, and it provides it. And when you're dealing with models, really the big thing is, are you using a tool or are you pointing to something that is externally exposed or externally out there? I'm trying not to use any company names directly, but you guys know what I'm talking about, right? You got a few bigger ones out there. These bigger ones train off of what's sent. Even if you tell it, don't train off of it, that information's still stored in a database somewhere. And as a developer, you and me, and those listening, when you write software and you save something to a database, you inactivate it. You never delete it. Deleting is so heavy. And and I won't get into the nuts and bolts, but most likely you're just going to flag that information. It's in there, but you're going to flag it as please ignore to simplify it. But the reality is, when you're dealing with a bank and you're dealing with the financial, you're dealing with healthcare, you're dealing with something that's life critical or life impacting, you need to really make sure that your model that you're using is clean. And if you're going out and grabbing models on a day-to-day basis off of the repositories out there, you might be grabbing something that has been tweaked maliciously and not realize it. And like containerization, run things local, bring the container in, bring the model in, the AI model, test against it. There's tools out there that will test against these things and validate them. And then you stuff them off to the side for about 2 weeks, put them in a sandbox. And for an AI model, look at it and play with it. Does it try to reach the internet? Does it try to do something that you don't want it to do as a bank? Because some do, and you don't realize it. And once you finally get to that point where you feel trustworthy on it, within 2 weeks on a container, someone's going to gripe, hey, this is malicious, or hey, this container has some AIFS level pieces that need to be fixed or vulnerable, or hey, this is a bad release. And so in that 2 weeks, you'll know, hey, this is good or bad. And then as your build pipeline, point to that sandbox area, put it over to a internal production. So you're using internal models. And once you start learning and doing models for learning for AI, stick with your own models, the ones that you know. And I know a lot of banks, and I've talked to a lot of CISOs at banks, and that's some of the things that they talk about is taking what they have and build it from the internal out. By doing that, then what you have, what's in there, that it's not being maliciously adjusted unless you have a North Korean developer working on your team without realizing it. It kind of happens. That never happens, right?
Nope.
No, that's cool. Yeah, it's good advice. Because I was even thinking, like, in the marketing aspect, I think in some of the AI models, what you're seeing now is, especially the ones that are connected to the internet, are starting to focus on search. And so I, on the side, do a lot of, like, I watch a lot of videos, do a lot of trainings on things that help me back in my day job with marketing. And one of the things I look at is even like affiliate marketing. Now, this may be you think it's way out of bounds for the conversation we're having, but affiliate marketing is basically, it used to be like you make a website that has a whole bunch of blog posts in it that you talk about information that might be around toasters or something. And then there's a link that goes off to Amazon. And so when somebody buys a toaster, then you get $1.06. One of the things that I'm seeing right now is with Search GPT and things like that coming out, that there's already talk about, here's how you manipulate the models in order to get your affiliate links in there early, because then the whole basis of search, you're getting in when you're getting in at the ground level. And I think it's interesting when you're talking about the large language models, you're different ways to maliciously put information in there so that when you think that basically the hallucination that you're getting is something that feels real, but it's based on bad info that was put in the first place. That's how I'm reading it, at least. Not that affiliate marketing is bad. I'm just, and that falls into data poisoning, where people will put stuff in there and poison the data. And then the other thing too is when you look at circumventing the guardrails and putting the things in there for the affiliate marketing, the question is, even if you're not first, you can still swing it. And the problem is, again, it goes back to weights. And if you get enough information in there, and you could get enough information in there, then you can swing it. A great example, I won't go too much details, but Microsoft back in, I think it was 2017, created a chatbot. It was one of their first entry levels into AI. They put it out there and they said, hey, we'd love, ask it any question, teach it, see what it does. It learns. And within 4 hours, Microsoft pulled it down and they apologized. And it did some very nasty things. And people were able to sway it from thinking one way to another. And when you look at AI and learning and education and things from a bank standpoint, from a security standpoint, you need to be considering what kind of things can come in there. And so what was neat is that Black Hat, there was a talk that I went to, and it was Google. Google was there. It was Microsoft, NVIDIA, and another guy. And they were talking about what happens as a kid. You touch a hot stove, you burn yourself. You only do it once because you never forget what it felt like. And the idea is to work with models and train it so that the model itself, the foundation, can learn and differentiate between good and bad. So that way, you now have a much harder path to poison the data, because it's going to look at it and go, that's a hot stove. I don't want it. I don't want to save that. Or that's good. That's helpful. That's beneficial to everybody, the ecosystem. Remember this. And so there's some really cool things that they're doing. And I was very impressed with their talk. Very cool. Was that earlier this year? It was actually about a month ago. It was, because I see an article from you, Black Hat AI and everything. I'll put that in the show notes. I appreciate that. Referring to, yeah, cool. Whatever the heck it is you do, man. Like, sounds like you probably have a good time, but also I'm enjoying this. I want to come back and do this again in 6 months and see where we are AI wise too, and security wise. But talk about Mend.io talk about what you do there, and because I feel like come to different places, but I would like to know what happens. So Mend.io, we are a security vendor. And so we create tools like software composite analysis. So we do have tools that will look at open source projects and tell you, are there vulnerabilities that are found?
The thing is when you're writing software, you pull in an open source tool, but did you realize that a lot of open source tools use additional open source? And so we will actually look at the chain of things that tool uses and be able to tell you, hey, 4, 5, 20 levels deep, you have a vulnerability. We have reachability analysis. So we can say, are you actually hitting that item 20 layers deep? So we do software composite analysis. We do container security. So we're out looking at, is the container malicious from a foundation or what you plugged into it? We have things such as Renovate, which is an open source, one of the largest open source tools out there that's free. It's community edition is amazing. What it does is it just simply says, hey, a new version came out. We took a look at it. You should consider taking it. And it keeps you up to date. And what's an SCA tool going to tell you to do? Update. If you're staying updated, guess what? You're already there. So that's definitely there. We do SAST, which is software code, static code analysis. So we looking at your source code. Is there something in here that looks vulnerable or from a code quality? We tell you. We do have an AI tool that looks at models that are out there and tells you, are they malicious or not and what's going on. We have some amazing things coming out that I can't talk about, but I could talk hours and hours. And the cool thing about Mend.io is our scalability. We can scale small all the way up to millions and millions of repositories sitting in GitHub, GitLab, and the like. And the beautiful thing is the information sits there within those environments. So your developers don't need to log into any additional tools. It really brings them to where they work. So if they work out of the repository system like GitHub, guess what? All the results are showing up in GitHub. They don't need to go out there, and we can create issues or we can do all this other amazing stuff. But we have amazing things going, and we have a lot of amazing things on the horizon. And I'd welcome you to take a look at it. And if you have questions about it, reach out to me. I'll put you in contact with the right people, and or I can answer them too.
Cool. I have a feeling you could probably answer them. That's good. I'll put your LinkedIn information in the show notes if that's cool, and also the article that's I think it's on men.io. And yeah, thanks, man. Just enjoyed it. And again, I feel like what I was saying to my son is, if you are not learning about AI at the same time you're learning about cybersecurity, then you're probably going the wrong direction. I hope, could you tell him?
Bring them on, because the thing is a lot of universities aren't even teaching security. And so the problem is that these kids are going through and they're not learning good security practices. So no, absolutely. Bring them on. Did I lose you? Are we online? I think I lost you. Grizz, you back?
I'm back. I think I got hacked off. Smart. Okay. Do you mind going back and actually saying what you're saying about a lot of universities don't?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
One thing that you'll find is a lot of colleges do not really teach security. They just really teach you that framework, that foundation, and they go, here, go off and go code and prosper. And the problem becomes developers that come out of school, they don't know how to code securely. And so it's really up to the devices. When you have, let me know, I'll talk to your son. And I've got one of those kids too that's in college, and he's, come on, Dad, what do you know? I'm like, look, I can sit there and teach your teacher a thing or two.
If he's in marketing, send him to me. I'll send my computer science kid to you. Yes, your child does not listen to you as well. I get it.
Yes. Kind of one and the same. And for those listening too, I do post 3 times a week on my personal LinkedIn account. Come find me, Chris Lindsey. You might, there's a few of us out there, so you might type Mend at the end. So Chris Lindsey Mend. You'll find me. I'll probably be in the show notes too. And then I do amazing things. And my whole life is really just about giving back and sharing my experiences and helping others to be more successful.
Cool. That is valiant, but also needed. So appreciate that. And yes, I will send Vance Griswold, if you're listening to this podcast.
Matthew, my son.
And, Matthew, listen to your dad. Vance, go listen to Chris. They hear you. And like I said, I really would love to do this again in another 6 months and just catch up and see where we are. Because not only cybersecurity, but AI, everything seems to like change in a heartbeat. Oh yeah, I appreciate that. And I got a lot of good pull quotes from here too, so we'll make sure that we put those out separately as well. But Chris Lindsey, thank you so much for your time. And I think with that, I'm going to say good day, good night, wherever you are.
Thank you. Yeah, have a good one too.